I'd like to start by just introducing our guest today. This is Lucas Rizotto, who is one of my favorite VR creators in our strange little universe. He most notably is the artist behind Where Thoughts Go, which premiered at Tribeca last year. And he's working on a new project that hopefully will get him to tell us about. Where Thoughts Go is a beautiful, emotional experience that Lucas is very proud of the fact that it makes people cry with frightening regularity.
Yes.
And with that, why don't you take over and introduce yourself and add some additional information to the bit I already gave.
Absolutely. And apologies in advance for the background noise. Things got a little chaotic at the conference and we wanted to stay on schedule. So I appreciate your understanding. And so yeah, Where Thoughts Go is a social VR narrative in which people visit these magical landscapes populated by these sleeping creatures, which are the voice messages left by other players who were there before you were. And I wanted really to use virtual reality to connect people emotionally in some interesting ways, but also explore the notion of narrative that is built communally by the people who play the experience, and not something, you know, as classical as like I write it and you experience, but rather something that we all write together. And I didn't know if it was going to work initially. It ended up working, thankfully. And now we are working on the sequel of this, which is called Love Letters, which is a continuation of an expansion of the concept in which we're going to add lots of interesting things. But we're also going to keep the focus of the narrative. The whole story is going to be about your relationship with someone you love. So in the beginning of the experience, you're going to be closing your eyes and you're going to be thinking of someone, and that could be a family member, or it could be a lover, or anyone else that you may be deeply fond of. And as you progress through the next set of chapters, you're going to be answering questions, very intimate questions about your relationship with that person. And as you do so, you'll also be able to listen to the answers of others as well and explore these very intimate relationships that we hold dear, all in an ever-growing, fantastical setting.
So the project's actually done pretty well for it being a weird art VR thing. It's available now on Steam and the Oculus Store. Anywhere else? You didn't do a PlayStation port, did you?
No, mostly because it's like PlayStation seems to, it's a lot of very.
You broke up there. What was it?
No, sorry. The PlayStation VR is very bureaucratic, so I haven't done it yet, but I will at some point, especially with future projects.
Oh, in terms of like getting the project accepted, like the hoops you have to jump through to just make it into the store?
Yeah, it's a very closed and slow network.
Got it. So why don't you talk a little bit about like the response and your release strategy for it? Because you've built quite a following and community around the project. At least that's my vibe. And I think that would be interesting for any artists on the call who, you know, want to find a community for their project.
Well, in terms of the launch strategy, I mean, there's several things that I would have done differently, and I would love to talk about those as well, because I think there were some interesting learnings. But I think, you know, this is an art piece that's built by the community, so by nature, it has to be a community-driven project. So this is what we ended up, this is why I ended up focusing on, is building a community from the ground up, try to get as many people involved in the process of making it as possible, testing it early, testing it often, and really trying to also find some online social marketing media strategies that would, you know, really communicate some of the ethos of the piece. Because Where Thoughts Go is a very emotional thing, so we wanted to have a very emotional marketing. And there's several things that I've done. Most of them is just really, I've been trying to be really community centered as an individual on Twitter and on social media in general, always be part of conversations about the future of virtual reality, the future of storytelling. And I've been trying to post as many of like my prototypes as possible online, as many of my side projects online. So once I started doing Where Thoughts Go, people were already paying attention due to my other projects, and they just, you know, continued paying attention to that one as well. And as we got closer to the launch date, and we started to do some interesting things. Like we would get some of the voice messages that really touched us, and we would post it in video format with some subtitles using in-game assets. And I can send you some detail. I can send you links to some of those below. So in a way, even if you're on Twitter, you can click on the video and get like a little peek into the emotional nature of the content without needing a VR headset. So there were some little marketing stunts like that. There was, I think, the film approaching this through the film festival circuit instead of the traditional indie game circuit was definitely beneficial for the project. I think it gave it a lot more eyes, and people started to look at it more as art and less, more like as a high art piece and less like an indie game, which I think also really helped the project. And yeah, I built a Discord channel when I also launched the project, and there's tons of people talking there every day, and people that are now very dear to me. And going on in the next project, I feel like I've established a community that I can rely on, and they're not only customers, but they also a big part of the development process now. They're the people that test the project. They're the people that tell about them to others, and they're the people that really, really, really love the brand. So
Yeah.
creating as many of those ambassadors as possible through any means necessary.
Hey, Lucas, it's a bit hard to hear you. You're breaking up quite a bit. Is anyone else having trouble? I know Natalie's having trouble hearing you. I wonder if it's just our connections or if it's the internet at the cafe you're at. If anyone else is having trouble, chime in on the chat log. I'm wondering if we should maybe pause and yeah, we're all having trouble. Lucas, why don't we do this? Why don't you find like a quieter spot with a little better internet, and I can bring in some of the people on the line to chat, and then you can just jump back in once you've found a better spot. Does that work?
I can do that as well. And so give me a second.
Okay, we'll see you in a few minutes. And in the meantime, anybody that wants to chat and talk, I'm just gonna, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna promote everyone to a panelist, and we're gonna see who bites. And we'll just have a fun chat. Lars, there you are, buddy. How are you doing? Who else do we have? Karenza, how are you doing?
I'm good. Oh, was that for me?
That was for you. That was for all. If anyone else wants to join and talk, just raise your hand and I'll promote you as a panelist. And then we can talk. So if everyone doesn't know on the line, Lars is one of my oldest and dearest VR buddies. He's also a pilot who flies around the world in a little barely airborne vehicle. Lars, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Hi. The plane was fine. It was old and was losing track a lot. But yeah, that was fun. Actually, I am going to meet you in Cannes. I just got my flight and I got accredited, and that all worked.
Really?
Quite, yeah.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Yeah.
So
very pragmatic. Sorry, what?
Oh, no, I was just going to let everyone else on the line know that Cannes, I'd never been to it before. This is going to be my first year, but I'm really excited about it because, is everyone saying they lost audio on me? Are they not? Lars, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Kareem, Natalie, can you not hear me at all? Can you hear no one? Well, okay, Mike can hear me. That's all I care about. So yeah, I'm really excited about Cannes this year because they have a new programmer named Ellie, and in the past I always thought Cannes felt a bit like they were just trying to get money out of artists, but Ellie seems like he's really using this as a platform to support artists. So I'm excited to go and check it out for the first time, and it looks like it's going to be quite a fun event. And now that Lars and I are going to be there, it's definitely going to be a fun event. So I encourage everyone on the line who can make it to Cannes this year to come.
Yeah. Maybe we should all share a house. Like find a I don't know, ginormous Airbnb.
That's exactly what we should do. We just did that at South by, and we had about 20 people staying in one beautiful former home to a drug lord in Austin. It was called Casa Cartel, and somebody bought it and redecorated it and made it pretty cool. So
Why
we should find something
redecorated?
like that in Cannes. I mean, I think they took what was there and they accentuated it, but it was quite beautiful. But Lars, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of the work that you do, because you're quite accomplished, and I think people on the line would like to know what you're up to.
Well, thank you. Yeah, actually, I just realized this year for 10 years I'm teaching motion design at a film school. And so this is my 10-year anniversary. But like a few
Congrats.
years ago, I got into 360, and I am also co-designing immersive audio software. And now we're struggling to negotiate buying the IP out of this consortium and putting it to the test and to the market. And we're starting to work on pilots, on remixes. Actually, I've just been to a beautiful silent movie theater show of Ninja Tunes. It's well, I guess you all know this, Ninja Tunes, the label. And they're doing like a Dolby Surround 360 immersive audio introduction of their albums, which is like super nice. It's very meditative. You're there with closed eyes in a movie theater and you listen to this like kick-ass sound system.
That's
Um,
badass.
yeah, totally, totally. And we have here in our building, in our studio, we have Monkey Town Records, which is known for Moderat and Mode Selector and Apparat. And we're going to start like working on remixes, immersive remixes for them, because
Oh, I love that
audio,
idea.
yeah, it's really nice. Because our audio is still like widely neglected, really. And we have software that can do ambisonics of fifth order, which is like in the video world compared like the resolution. And fifth order is really the highest resolution you can have right now. And we can do fifth order with our software. And so now we're exploring this. We're co-founding this company around this audio thing. And so we're going to create a pilot. So soon I will also be in touch with you and see if we can also just support other projects with really, really intense audio. So yeah.
So what does the software do exactly? It's a way of spatializing audio easier or at higher fidelity. Like how does the thing that you're building improve over? I mean, most people I guess just use like whatever the audio defaults are in Unity when they're building something.
Yeah. Well, there's the big difference between room scale VR and ambisonics. You can compare this to basically really games and film. So ambisonics is what's film, like fully rendered, super high end, and this is the thing that you totally buy. You just believe it. And Unity so far is still the compared game engine because everything it does has to be like rendered live. So all the reflections, all the HRTFs and everything are calculated live. And this is why the quality is still like very poor compared to ambisonics. But if you mix it, it gets really interesting. So if you create most of the sounds, those that don't depend on live interaction, if you make those in ambisonics and the rest in interactive inside the game engine, that just totally elevates the quality of the audio a lot. That's just the difference whether or not you buy it. And if you buy the audio, you're really in that situation. It's really interesting.
No, that's true. Yeah, I would rather watch something that has like terrible visuals and great audio than amazing visuals and terrible audio. There's few things that
Yeah.
can ruin a movie or any experience than like really terrible audio. But so this idea of doing immersive audio for an album is super fascinating. Is that one of the areas you're focused on? I mean, you just brought that up a moment ago for some artists that are doing that with other people's software. Is that going to be a thing that you focus on then?
It would, yeah. That's certainly going to be one thing. I mean, there's a lot of artists that already like experiment with this. There's Max Cooper who experiments with this like 4D speaker setup. Because the question is like, how do you develop the pipeline? And so far, there's only one player that's out there that can play ambisonics of third order, and that's the VLC player. It's free, but the VLC already uses our engine. And so far, there's hardly a way to really replay high quality of this. Most people in 360 video use ambisonics of first order, like YouTube 360, and that's just the lowest resolution you can have in audio. And as you say, it's really true. Like our survival depended on us hearing what's behind us, hearing what we don't see. So, and this is why when audio is odd, as you say, it's a lot worse. We can trick the eye much easier than audio. Yet still, so many people focus on the visuals so much more than on the audio. But if you bring it together, it can be super powerful. And yes, something as emotional as music is just mind-blowing. It's really intense. And we can transport it already if we do a binaural mixdown in fifth order. You don't need anything. It's a stereo file. You can play it with regular headphones, but the depth of the experience is just like so rich, so incredible.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I love that idea of creating music listening experiences with like the best quality sound you possibly can and having it in a group setting. I mean, there was this thing in San Francisco, maybe someone on the line can remember what it is. It's this weird experimental thing that was made in like the 70s. And it's like a physical building that you go to. And somebody had built this out again, like in the 70s, where it was this surround sound, crazy audio journey where you about 30, maybe 50 people go into a space and the lights dim. It's very like futuristic 70s looking in terms of the decor, like lots of shag carpet kind of vibe. And but it was an attempt to do something like that with like 40-year-old technology now, or maybe even 50-year-old technology. But it was still really compelling, and I'm surprised that we haven't seen more people do that, where they create these listening rooms at super high, or maybe they have, and I just don't know about them. But
there was a lot of makeshift solutions, and everything that was like people were creating a single track for each speaker. But of course, everything, especially for something as fine-tuned as our hearing, it was, let's say, interesting, but more interesting as if you don't like the food and call it interesting. If you do a real calibration of the room, you can create like super amazing things that even we had 2 years ago at Sona, which is this music festival in Barcelona. We had the premiere, like first time showing our system, and we created a whole sphere of speakers, and we did experiments. For example, we experimented how fast we can rotate a stereo sound. And we can rotate the stereo sound in the speed of the sample. So if it's a 48 kilohertz sample, you can rotate it 48,000 times per second. Now, there's no way to hear the difference. That's the interesting thing, is you cannot hear you cannot tell, oh, this is 4,000 and this is 40,000. But what happens with the sound is like it gets like almost haptic. It's like it turns like almost liquid. You can almost feel it on your skin.
Oh, wow.
And there's not a single position in the room that sounds the same. And if you move your head, you create a melody. So we created like just a 50 hertz tone. And everybody was, the expression on people's faces was just like, what the hell is this? And the guy actually who was doing the demo had the same look on his face, because it was the first time this was done.
Oh, that's so fascinating. That's so, wow. That's I definitely want to try that. It looks like Lucas is back. Lars, if you want to stick around, please do. Lucas, do you want to jump in with your video feed, and we'll see if we can hear you and see you okay? And thank you, Lars.
My video feed is on, I think.
Oh, there we go. Oh, no, it must have been, but I think it only cuts when someone's talking.
Oh, that's why.
Lars, we need to have you on for a full session to talk more about this. I mean, I don't know. I've always been like good friends with you, but I also haven't done like my due diligence to really see and experience your work. So I definitely want to check that out.
Let's do that. Please, let's do that. I'm open for that anytime.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I'm going to go ahead and mute all the other people I added to the panelist thing, and except for Lucas, and we will, oh, but I did, there. Lucas, did you mute yourself? You're muted now.
Yes.
Oh.
Lars, thank you so much for taking over, and I totally echo you on ambisonics. It's something I'm trying to get much more into. And not only just with sound effects, but also with soundtracks, and trying to, I've been thinking a lot about what spatialized soundtracks should look like, and where should each instrument be, and what kind of significance that could have to the story and the emotional output. So I think it's something really cool and worth exploring.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so let's pause on your work now, because I'm curious to know like where you came from, Lucas. You're from Brazil. And like, what was your journey into immersive art? And because weren't you like a party promoter too? Like, how did just give me the background.
Yeah, I have a very diverse background. I've changed careers multiple times for various reasons, but I've always been creative, and I've always wanted to be a filmmaker when I was a kid. I did lots of home movies, especially between the ages of 8 and 14. But no one in my life was particularly creative, so they didn't know what to do with it. So I ended up going down in different directions, and now I ended up here, which is storytelling, but through a different space. And as far as what I used to do, I mean, I've worked as a songwriter briefly between 16 and 18 for Universal Music, which was a very weird period of my life. And then I did become a party promoter, I guess an event producer, between the ages of 19 and 21, when I started drinking and I uncovered a new social world and wanted to do things with it. Think of it like as immersive experiences, but for the physical world. And
this was in Brazil, right?
This was in Brazil. This was in
Which,
Rio.
where you were in Rio? Okay.
Yes, I was in Rio back then. I didn't think about technology at all. I thought it was something that only, children geniuses could do, especially when it came to coding. So I always, I saw stuff that was happening. Like I saw the Oculus Rift Kickstarter and I thought it was cool, but I never imagined I could do any of that. And eventually, after 3 years of doing parties and dropping out of college twice, I wanted to do something different with more of a larger scale. The events that I was doing were really cool, but they were local. You could do like an event, but it would be like 2,000 people at most. So I wanted to do things that were bigger, and I impulsively moved to New York City, not really knowing what would happen in my life, but just to, press the reset button and rethink my whole life. And then as the next couple of years, unfolded, I started to get closer to technology and be like, maybe I can do that. But really, once I started to see that people were using virtual reality and those kinds of things for art and for other types of storytelling, it really caught my attention. And eventually, I started going to hackathons. I started building things with strangers, and I started to find my own voice in this. And at late 2016, I bought a Microsoft HoloLens with money that should have been going to my college tuition to put myself in pressure. And I was like, shit, now I have to make stuff with this. And that's when my career really started, I think, when I put myself under that kind of pressure and started building things. And then, I started building the community, listening to what people had to say. And Where Thoughts Go came in like the summer of 2017. That's when I started working on it.
So, did you release anything before Where Thoughts Go? Because that was the only project that I've seen that's like actually made it out into the wild, right?
Yeah, I released a couple of mixed reality HoloLens applications. So I launched an educational app for chemistry, and I launched a game called Cybersnake, which is ridiculous, and there's a great video about it on YouTube. Both of these did fairly well, especially on social media, and put me on the map with, within the community, but also with Microsoft, which also, they helped me out as well and lifted me up when there wasn't a lot of creative work happening on the HoloLens. And I made tons of projects that didn't get released that I have been posting about in 2016 and 2017. And Where Thoughts Go was the first, I think it was my biggest project, and it was the first storytelling centered thing I've ever done. And initially I didn't know it was going to work, actually, until May of 2017. I didn't know there was a VR section in film festivals at all. But once I found out there was one and that they were open to experimental storytelling and all sorts of weird things, then I was like, I tried to find my way into it and eventually got in. I mean, yeah.
Well, the first time I met you was at our First Look event, our marketplace event that we held in September of 2017. So that must have been like, yeah, shortly after this thing started to really become a thing. And I remember you just sort of like I don't know how you got in or what, but in my memory, you just sort of like showed up. You were just like there. And I was like, oh, wow. How did you, like, I admire people that have persistence and are hustlers and so the fact that somehow you got to this like private event and we're just like there in the back room, like demoing your stuff, I was like, oh wow, this kid knows how to, navigate the waters. So yeah, talk about that. Like, talk about how you are a natural hustler. So I think that's a good quality for an artist to have.
Thanks. You're putting me on the spot, but in my defense, I was invited.
Oh, you were? Okay.
I did. I got an invitation from somewhere, and I was there I was there helping Assad set up his demo as well. So
Oh, okay,
I arrived
brilliant.
early, and it was a little exchange we had. Like I think I lended him one of my HoloLenses, and we're like, "I'll help you out, help me out," kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, didn't I don't feel I'm okay with pushing my way into things, but um, I'm also careful so I'm not disrespectful, especially when it
Oh
comes
no, I never
to
thought you
that.
were
No,
disrespectful at
I
all.
know.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, like, chase after things, but also, respect certain ethical boundaries
yeah,
when you're doing so. Um, yeah, I mean, that's what I've been realizing when it comes to this space. And actually, one thing that I forgot to mention, that the thing that really got me creatively invested in virtual and augmented reality was when I realized that no one knew what they were doing. And then me, and I don't know what I'm doing, I felt just so comfortable in that idea that we were in
yeah.
something that's so new. And even the people that we regard right now as like the biggest creators in our industry, they probably have like at most like 4 years of experience, more experience than you. So it's very horizontal right now. And you at Tribeca, we were like showcasing Where Thoughts Go, which had, without counting my time, like $500 that we spent to put it together, like buying assets and stuff. And we were right next to a project that cost like, $2 million to make. So I think this time of the industry is really inspiring. And it's, it's a moment in which passion and hustling is more valuable than money. And so I think, if you're really passionate, if you're really, putting effort into it, you can do more than people without those things, but lots of financial resources. And mostly because, I think a lot of the success in this space right now is really how you present yourself, how you communicate, and how you try to make innovative things that are emotionally powerful, simple to do, and don't require a lot of money to pursue.
Yeah, I think that's a very smart strategy. I mean, especially when artists are trying to make I mean, because this was your first experience, right? And I think it fits into a model that makes a lot of sense, which is do a project that you can basically do by yourself as much as possible. Because that's the one thing you can control is your own energy and your own time and your own resources. So I mean, my impression was that 90% of Where Thoughts Go was done by you. I think you had some help from some collaborators, but it felt like the vast majority of it was designed, architected, marketed, like everything to do with the project was like done by you.
Yeah, I had the help of some friends, and Aiden Wolf he helped me out with some of the cloud development upgrades that we've done between August and November. And of course, like a huge thanks to my friends who I put them in headsets all the time and asked them how they felt about things. How should I, change colors? And Stephen Hodgson also, who was a Unity mentor of mine, and basically, got me transitioning from being like a newbie developer to an intermediate one. Um, and just a second. Okay. But yeah, I think the notion that we need to work on projects so we can do at least most of things on our own is really important, because those are the variables that you do control. And, it will, I'd also say that control your ambitions. Where Thoughts Go ended up being about maybe 15% of what I originally planned. And if the concept you're working with is strong enough, I think even if it's working at 10 or 15% capacity, it's still going to be good, and people are still going to be, to enjoy it. So try to, I guess, find something that is emotionally powerful enough that even if you can't build all the bells and whistles, that even if you can't do the production that you want to do at the scale that you want to do, even if you just if you take out all of the expensive, unnecessary elements and you just focus on the core, you still have something meaningful. And I think Where Thoughts Go worked because of that. It was supposed to have like this huge narrative and this huge world and all sorts of cool locomotion mechanics. And I couldn't do any of that when I started building. I was like, oh, I can't do that. It's too much. But, it still worked when you took out all the other elements. So I think trying to find those core ideas that work even, just on their own is particularly important.
Yeah, completely agree. Um, so given that, like, talk about the ambition of your next project. Like, what are you comfortable telling people about love letters?
So love letters, I think with Where Thoughts Go, I think I was uncovering a new format of social storytelling. It's, especially using virtual reality. And I was playing lots with lots of ideas, some intentionally and some, I was just exploring new ground, and I didn't know exactly where it was going to go, but I was just like playing with new ideas and seeing what would happen. Now I want to take everything that I've learned from the original Where Thoughts Go and go back to those old ambitions that I had with the original project, and try to make something more more fully featured and even more intimate and even more refined and well designed, and create a story that feels like really that feels very much like a full thing. So Where Thoughts Go, I think, was the discovery of a new format, and I think Love Letters is going to be the expansion and perfection of said format. So in Where Thoughts Go, you're asked a bunch of personal questions that, they're all intimate, but they're a little bit disconnected in theme. But Love Letters, all the questions are about your relationship with a single person. So first one was cool and engaging, but the second one is more refined, and everything kind of like comes together in a better way. And Where Thoughts Go, I had 5 environments that were like pretty and emotionally effective. It got people into a certain headspace and mood, but they were all disconnected. And then Love Letters were like building a more concise world they get to explore, using like a new set of locomotion mechanics. So it's really getting everything, the best aspects of Where Thoughts Go and expanding upon them, and creating a narrative that's more intimate, more personal, bigger in pretty much every way. And there was one more thing. It'll come back to me. But really, just improve and grow the format. Oh, and replayability. That's a big one. Where Thoughts Go, people played it once, and you have some people that played it, number of sessions on average. For the original Where Thoughts Go was like 3 or 4. But Where Thoughts Go, for the most part, people play it once, and they feel like they've seen most things, and most people don't play it a second time. With Love Letters, because the whole experience is designed around a person you think of in the beginning, you can replay the experience over and over again by just thinking of different people. So it becomes not only like endlessly replayable as long as you have people in your life you can think about, but it becomes also this larger tool for the examination of relationships as well, which has even some uses in mental health. So yeah, I think it's a new brand of entertainment that's like, I've been calling it self-care entertainment, and I think others have been too, which is, entertainment that has a health or psychological benefit. And I think that's what Where Thoughts Go and Love Letters will be.
I love it. Yeah. Uh, so, and with Love Letters, are you planning to do this with a larger team? Like, what does the team look like? Or is this something that you're going to be doing
Yes.
most again?
No, hell no, never again. I feel like it's, doing 1 or 2 projects on your own is sort of like a required sacrifice to, prove the world that you know what you're doing, and that your ideas have some form of value, and can execute things. And it does help a lot with showing the world that you are also a collaborator they can work with. So now that I've made Where Thoughts Go and I've proven the world that I can do things, with Love Letters, I want to start working with people that I respect and people whose work I admire. And so I'll be teaming up with Vladimir, who's known online as VR Human, which is a fantastic virtual reality actor. He's been doing this thing on Twitter called VR Every Day for about 370 or 380 days now. He's been
Wow.
like a new VR piece sculpted on medium or tilt brush every single day. And we really like each other, and I think he will be a great fit for designing the world. So I want to work with him, as well as another, sound designer called Chris Lane, who has worked on everything from mobile game apps to like Black Panther. He's also a really lovely human being and someone I want to work with. And a developer called, Dylan, who works at Unity Labs.
Oh, I know Dylan. He did that project called Dreams.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
Who
yeah.
I
He's bad.
also like very much.
That's great. It sounds like an awesome team. Um, so I think another, like, I don't know, I've got like three or four other things that I think are interesting, particularly about you. But one of them is that, like, you seem to be a citizen of the world. Where do you live? Like, you're just sort of always floating around. Talk about that.
So right now I am living on in Airbnb, and that has been actually no. But right now for South by, I'm staying at a friend's house because the Airbnbs were just like crazy expensive. But I've been moving around, jumping from country to country in Airbnb, usually staying around like 3 weeks in each location, and I've been doing this mostly because most of my projects right now are in pre-production, so I'm doing a lot of my work alone. And if I'm working from home, I could be working anywhere. So might as well, spend like a month in Berlin or a month in Barcelona or a month somewhere else. And I think it's been hugely rewarding for several reasons. Number one, it is cheaper than living in the major cities in the US,
Yeah.
which is ridiculous. Like usually people ask me, how are you affording this? And I'm asking like, no, how are you affording this? And
So true.
and number two, it's you're consistently being exposed to just to new stuff. Every time I walk out to have a coffee, I learn something new. And it's been really inspiring creatively. Like I haven't gotten creatively stuck ever since I started doing this. And number three, it connects you to VR AR creators. I mean, it's been connecting me to VR AR creators in the international community. So I get to see what people are doing in each location, and I get to see what are their values and how do they differ from other locations. What are people thinking about in each corner of the world, and how is like the larger virtual and augmented in the larger VR AR ecosystem, how it's shaping up globally. So I've been learning a lot from those things, and I think I'm going to end up in LA at the end of the day. But while the projects are smaller and the teams are smaller and things are not too crazy, I think I'll be traveling as much as I can, um, both for the reasons that it helps me grow as a person, it helps me grow, I think, creatively, and it is financially more affordable as well.
That's very cool. And it is one of the things that I love about our community is how international it is. So I'm curious, what cities do you feel like are hotspots? Where have you discovered like really amazing creative communities in the
Mm.
XR world?
LA is by far the biggest,
Yep.
and has to be said. I'm going to talk about outside the US, some of the places that I've been talking to a lot of people, and some of them I haven't been there personally, but are still growing hotspots. I'd say Berlin. I was there, definitely a hotspot. Lots of artists and creators, and they're doing really, really, really weird, artsy stuff. So there's definitely a big movement there. Amsterdam as well is another big spot. London and Brighton, which are two cities in England. Brighton especially has a very, very strong community of artists. And
Can you talk about that? Because that's new to me. What's the Brighton vibe?
so Brighton is like it's an hour away from London south. It's close to it's right next to the coastline, and it's the place that creative people from London ended up running away to. It feels a
Oh,
lot like
neat.
Portland is the general
Huh?
consensus.
Cool.
And yeah, there's
That's where I live.
lots of individuals like artists and studios that are moving there. There's a strong gaming community there as well, and it's a smaller city vibe, but everyone there is creative and friendly. And usually, you can count on um, the big studios, the big more established studios stay in London, but the artists they move down south to Brighton, and that this also seems to be like an ongoing um, thing where it's Berlin is also full of AR artists because of affordability of living. So there's a direct connection between independent artists and affordable cities, and which is also worth mentioning. But that's in Europe. So I'd say those three are really doing really well in Europe, and Seoul and Tokyo, and China as a whole, Shanghai are all growing hubs that are growing very rapidly.
Have you become friends with any artists in Tokyo or Seoul or Shanghai? Because I know they've got big scenes, and I've gotten to be friends with people that are in those scenes, but only a handful of artists. And I've been surprised that I haven't become friends with more artists. And actually, the one new thing that or area is Taiwan. A lot of the kids that did Altered Souls, which was at Sundance this year, are from Taiwan, and so that sort of popped up on my radar as a hotspot where there are a lot of artists doing interesting things in Asia. And yeah, so have you become friends with other like artists, and if so, like who in Asia?
So I haven't been to Asia physically yet. I want to, and this is one of my like go-to destinations this summer. I've talked to a couple people on Twitter, mostly because I've seen I've seen some of their work or vice versa, and we just start the DM conversation. But if there's one thing I learned, when you're traveling and in events, is that most of my friendships and collaborations lately have been starting on Twitter, and then they move on to physical real life encounters. And I think that's when you see the transition from this person online into a larger friendship. So I don't have large established friendships with people who live there. I have lots of friendships with people who go back and forth, but I think one of my goals this summer is to spend some time there and connect with the local communities and find out what they're about, because they're doing some weird stuff that you don't see much more like very often in the West, and different economic realities. Like VR LBE it's huge in China, and it's doing very well in Japan to a different level than what we see in the United States. So I think getting to learn about people, what they're doing, but also what new economic models are forming in these different cultures is really informative.
Cool. And so another thing that I want to talk to you about was is this festival culture? Because you were talking about earlier when you discovered that festivals are curating VR and AR projects. I really was reflecting that upon that at South by this year, just how important those festivals have been to galvanize the community. I think they've provided a space and a context and a reason for us to all come together, and it's a huge motivator getting into one of these festivals to, by hook or crook, get a project finished. Yeah, let's talk about that. I think it's maybe it's one of those obvious things, but for me, it was really I don't know, it hit me particularly at South by this year, just seeing how special that is and what an interesting contribution that is. And I don't think we'd be where we are without those festivals doing this.
Yeah, it's been huge, and it's not an obvious thing. Like, I think it's totally understandable that me and many others, they don't know that these things exist. Because film festivals are a normal idea in the film world, but not so much in the indie game world. And right now, with virtual reality, you're seeing the convergence of these two spaces. So it's been really cool, mostly because I think it's been connecting people from these multiple realities. And like I'm meeting people who have been doing projection art and now moved into virtual reality, and we can have a really cool conversation about our differences in approach, and people who come from an animating world going into virtual reality, or going from theater into virtual reality, or dance into virtual reality. So there's it becomes a melting pot of ideas and personalities, and a great place to build friendships. The people that I've met at the virtual cinema, like so many fantastic people, and it still hasn't ended yet. Especially the ones at the Kaleidoscope booth, which I got to bond really hard with, because nothing makes you bond harder than building furniture together.
Yeah.
And
So why don't we pause and give a little context? So Kaleidoscope put together this funding showcase that had Lucas's project Love Letters, as well as 6 other projects. And Blake, who programs the festival, was really keen on us doing this. We did it for the first time in 2017, where we showcased about 10 projects. And Battlescar was one of them. And it was that event where they connected with Atlas and then sort of helped get that project funded. So Blake was really keen on doing this again. And the first year we did it, we just had like 2 machines set up, and that was it. And this year I was like, well, we should like make it into a like some place where you could take your meetings and you'd want to actually hang out. But being you know, a tiny little itty bitty startup that has no money, I was like, how am I going to do this? Well, let's just go to IKEA and let's buy a bunch of furniture and then set up this whole like living room tableau and then return it all. So you don't have to actually spend any money. So Lucas and one of the other people, Aubrey, were like absolute champions. They showed up on Saturday or Sunday and like all day long helped us install and set up and put together all of this crazy furniture.
Yeah, and I really like Aubrey and everyone else. And I think honestly that, you know, the friendships you make at these events and these festivals, they in the future they become collaborations, and in the future, you know, everyone lifts each other professionally and shares resources and all of that. So I think it's a big thing, not only personally, right, because you get to build relationships with all these people, but also, you know, as a community, I think it greatly accelerates the development of virtual reality, because we're not operating alone anymore. And I think that's one of the big things Kaleidoscope is about. It's about grabbing all those people like who are working on their own individual projects, sometimes in isolation, and giving them a single place where they can meet and interact and grow and collaborate. So film festivals have been huge to showcase the work and to get it seen by other industries, but I think the biggest benefit I get from them is the friendships I make in the process.
Yeah, I completely agree. I totally agree. And yeah, out of everything that we do, like out of all the different, you know, programs that we've run, you know, I think the value that seems to be the most consistent is actually the artists becoming friends with each other and supporting each other. Because I think it, you know, especially in an industry that's so itty bitty and honestly struggling like ours, I think it is. You know, I often feel like there's you know, no one's going to come and save us. Like we have to, you know, we have to pull together and figure out how to make this work ourselves. And I think it is, you know, these friendships between artists as well as like, you know, some key industry people that will, you know, see us through this, you know, challenging time in the industry. So make friends and treat them well. So I think we should open it up to questions from people. We've got 10 minutes left. So if you've got a question, throw it in the chat log or raise your hand, and I'll bring you in as a panelist, so you can just ask it directly. I guess while we're waiting for people to think of questions, I will ask you one myself.
Yes.
Let's see. Let's make it a good one. What was your favorite party at South by?
Oh my God, it's the second one at the XR house. The first one, for context, it went a little bit out of control. It was supposed to be a 2-hour XR demos meeting, so people were going to demo their projects, and it was going to be chill. But then, it got really crazy, and you knew that, you know, it wasn't just an XR thing anymore when you were talking to people like Rob from Target, you know, who was lovely, but it was like, how'd you get here? And first night got too crazy, and like Renee and everyone else was like super graceful given the chaos that it turned into. But the second night it was more focused, and you still, you know, it was still a large event, but there was everyone there was there in the service of virtual and augmented reality, and everyone was nice, and I got to meet so many friends who were there for the tech side as well, not only the, you know, the VR AR storytelling. So we got to connect, and I got access to some cool technology as well out of the whole event. And I think that was my favorite party. And they had a VR piece running inside of a pool, which is really cool. And
I have to give. Were you there for the smartphone orchestra?
yeah. I was pushing them to do it for a very long time. And
Good. That was my highlight, I
thing.
think, the whole thing. If you guys don't know about Smartphone Orchestra, you should definitely Google it. It's this beautiful project where in a co-located space, you get a bunch of people to sync their phones to make music together. Oh, so special. So we got some questions. We got one from Natalie. How are you planning to finance your new project? Yes. How are you?
Ooh, through so we're talking to a couple of people inside of Oculus, HTC, and manufacturers about getting funding internally from them. We're talking to the creative tools that we're using to develop the project to see if we can tap into their marketing budgets to do something together. So right now we're planning to build love letters with Oculus Medium, but depending on the tools we use, we might be able to get some funding out of that as well. I'm definitely doing a Kickstarter campaign, definitely, which is something I didn't do in the previous one, but this is not for the money exactly, even though, it will give an initial bit of funding, but definitely want to do a Kickstarter to build a community of people who are emotionally invested into the project from moment one and can see it grow throughout the next couple of months. The money is just
Nice.
a nice part of it. And
Lucas, just as an aside, you should definitely coordinate with me about that because we're buddies with a lot of those Kickstarter people, and sometimes getting your project featured can be a little hard. So, and this goes for anybody on the line. I think Kickstarter is an awesome tool. People should always consider using it at certain stages of their project, and when you do, come to me to help you get it featured because I can some dollars and get some people pulled in from outside of your immediate community. So keep on going.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you. And so we have headset manufacturers, we have the creative tools we're using, we have some Kickstarter crowdfunding, and we have partnerships with film/game studios. And I think all of those four things together will comprise what is our funding strategy, with a possible fifth, which is brand partnership, which maybe our project aligns with something that Intel is doing or with something Samsung is doing, and we're going to be on the lookout for those. So I think those are the five main ones. And sixth one, grants. Always good.
Yeah.
There's always one that appears. I built Where Thoughts Go without, it was mainly my time and a couple $100, but we got access to a grant after the project was done, which was really nice. And so we funded the project late through that.
And I think another point on the funding thing is that you're not trying to raise that much money. You're trying to raise what, 100,000, 150, something like that?
Yeah, 125K as of now.
Which is good. I mean, that's 25 to maybe even 50K could come from Kickstarter, and you're well on your way. It's hard to produce something of great quality for that, but again, because you're using a lot of your own resources and time and talent, that money can go pretty far.
Yeah, I'm trying to work with very, very resourceful people who are generalists and are known for developing things, high quality things quickly. And so VR Human, he's been doing, daily VR art pieces for the past 380 days. Definitely someone I want to work with. Chris Lane as well, and Dylan, they all work very fast and they're all very smart, and they, I think we can do it. My main thing is that I want every project to have a larger budget than the previous, so I can really, start to play and to learn how to, and to grow projects in scale. But I think it's important to be able to work with smaller budgets because that's how you really learn how to use the money.
Yeah, so true. Okay, great question from Joris. Curious about co-creation with your audience in your next project. How to direct a general narrative while having users give input.
So when we ask people to do recordings in Where Thoughts Go and Love Letters, and that is a great question, we write prompts. So it literally asks you a question or tells you to do something, and people tend to follow those prompts. And you can design, for when you're thinking about a larger emotional arc, if you have 5 chapters and you're trying to create a larger emotional arcs through prompts, the easiest way to do it is to get people to play it and to answer those questions and see generally how they feel and see what is the general kind of response and the general emotional content of that response. That's how we did in Where Thoughts Go. We just had a bunch of chapters in which we'd ask people a bunch of different questions, and we would see how they would feel about each one of them. And as we started doing that, we started to detect certain emotional colors that asking people certain things would result in more funny answers. Others would be darker. Others would be more intimate and embarrassing. And once we started to, build this palette of emotional colors, we were able to sequence it in an order that creates like this emotional arc, which is ultimately the emotional experience people have when they play Where Thoughts Go. So really, to answer the question, you iterate with the community, you see what kinds of things they say, and there's always patterns in that. There's always a couple of outliers, but there's always a general pattern when it comes to co-creation, and reducing the number of variables and keeping questions ambiguous in some nature, but also kind of like exact, so people can't go in crazy directions that have nothing to do with the emotional content of the story, is also a great way of directing large crowds of people. And the Smartphone Orchestra, definitely check them out, does that very well as well.
Yeah, so brilliant. Oh, we got some props for you. No question,
Thank
but they
you.
want to applaud the project. Yeah, it really is beautiful. And if definitely everyone on the line, if you haven't seen it or purchased it, like go get it now. It's really good, and it's cheap too. It's like $14, right? Or 10. What would you price it at?
10. It's 10 for now, but I'm going to be releasing some free chapters in the next the next couple of months, and we're going to be, as the more content we add, the more we're going to increase the price until it's a $20 title. One thing, don't do 15 and up. I'd say don't price your things 10 or below. That's one of the things I've been learning with virtual reality. People buy less $10 titles, not because of their quality, but because they're $10. There's a very weird psychological component here.
No, people use price as a as shorthand for quality. Like if you don't know about a thing, like what it's priced at tells you something about its quality. So yeah, I definitely encourage people to price high, because you can always lower the price, but it's really hard to raise the price. And you've potentially lost out on some money. I mean, there's definitely a price that's too high, but yeah, I think in that $15 to $25 range is a really good price for interactive, weird, arty things. Because your audience is going to be small anyways, and if someone's going to want to watch it, the difference between $10 and $20 isn't that much for them.
Yes, and we're setting precedent. So if we start, pricing those things very low, people are going to start building expectations that these things should have low prices, and I'm very much in the train of not doing that.
Well, Lucas, I have to say, it's you really are one of the bright spots. You make me inspired. You make me want to keep pushing as hard as I can to help artists like you get funding, because I just want to see more Lucases in the world. And I want to see more work from this specific Lucas. So keep doing what you're doing, man. It's really good. It's really good. It makes me so happy.
Thank you. You're also really inspiring for building these communities and getting these projects made as well. And yeah, everyone, thank you for coming. And sorry again for the technical difficulties. I can explain what happened later, but things were chaotic, and I don't have a home right now. That is a short version. Yeah.
All right, Lucas. We'll see you. Where will we see you next? What's the next event we're going to see you at? Will you be at Tribeca?
I'll be at GDC. And then I'll be in LA for a month, just putting my head down and working, and then I'll be at Tribeca. So if you are in any of these, let's make sure we have beers.
Well, I'll see you next week, Lucas. I'll be at GDC as well, so we'll get beers. And anyone else on the line, if you're going to be at GDC, reach out to us.
Yes.
Oh, and on that topic, how can people get in touch with you? What's the best way? Do you want to share your email, or do you prefer DMs on Twitter? Like, add it to the chat log, however your preferred communication method.
DM me on Twitter if you want my email. Let's do it that way. I spend a lot of time on Twitter, an unreasonable amount. So
why don't you put your handle in there just so people, because there is another Lucas that doesn't have an underscore in his name.
Okay. Yes, that Lucas.
Or here, I can do it if you're not in a place to do it.
Hold on, I got it.
Oh, you got it. All right.
Bam.
Oh, that's an email. Okay.
There's another Luke. Oh, right. Jesus. This is my email, and my Twitter handle can be found here, _Lucas Rizzotto.
Brilliant. Wonderful. Well, thank you everyone for joining. And I look forward to seeing you next Friday. And
Yes.
ta-ta.
Bye bye.
Bye.